Welcome to the Burnout Recovery Podcast, a guiding resource dedicated to healthcare professionals on their journey to overcoming burnout. Spearheaded by Dr Jo Braid, a certified professional coach and rehabilitation physician.
Hello and welcome back to the Burnout Recovery Podcast. This week on the pod, I am so delighted to welcome Dr. Sunny Smith all the way from San Diego. Welcome, Sunny.
Hello, it's great to be here.
So Sunny and I, so good to have you here, Sunny. We've never met in person. We haven't really met much online, but I am so excited to have you as our keynote speaker for the Curious About Coaching Virtual Summit later this year in September. I've seen you around on the interwebs leading amazingly as a doctor and a coach, particularly in your business, empowering women physicians. And would you like to give your own introduction, really, I guess, through to my audience on either how you got to here today or what you're up to here today and the backstory to that?
Yeah, beautiful. It's an honor to be invited and to be speaking at your summit. And the issues are so important. So anybody who's listening, obviously, if you're listening, you might as well come. And for those who don't know me, my name is Dr. Sunny Smith. I trained as a family physician. I spent my career at UC San Diego School of Medicine, professional medical educator. I was the medical director of our free clinic there. So that was sort of my clinical practice. My entire career was running a student-run free clinic. It grew to the biggest in the country, published Star Outcomes in JAMA, all that stuff. And so that was my clinical world. My advisor role was taking care of the personal and professional well-being of the medical students. I was assigned a sixth of the school in something called community director, academic community director, many other things that I'm passionate about from that realm. I mentioned that because of the sort of being in charge of people's personal and professional well-being. Yet, while the professor, role model, I had my baby and he was, then went back and he was 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And I just, you get so busy in that phase of life. Many of us, I just turned 50. And so many of us, looking back, we're like, how did I do all those things? Right? All the things. I was momming this tiny one. I was, writing, researching, teaching, grading, doing all the things. And so there were some sort of incidents that happened that we can talk about how I ended up making the switch. But now what I do is I have transitioned that personal and professional wellness support into a coaching program that's called Empowering Women Physicians. We have a Facebook group where there's 12,000 people. And basically in there, people just write anything that they're really truly going through. And I respond as if they were my clients, right? Like I really care. And we really are. There's a micro mentoring from women physicians from, all across the world and all different specialties that are just like, yeah, what you're going through, you're not alone. Right? If your boss is mean or if you're being fired or if you won't get promoted or if your, family members this, because there's just such a universal experience of being in healthcare and as a physician and as a woman physician. So we talk about all issues in there, have a podcast and a coaching program, which actually we, if people want to look it up in PubMed, our coaching program is the most effective physician wellness program shown, documented to date in terms of effect size, which I think you probably know. But what that is just saying is that coaching is effective. It's incredibly effective. And the effect size is remarkable. Our people came into our program at a baseline of 70-some% burned out and 8 weeks later left at 30-some% burned out. So it doesn't take quitting your job. It doesn't take years. It takes coming back in and realizing that you do have choice. You have some control. The system has taught you have no control. In your relationship, you feel like you have no control. With your parenting, you feel like you have no control. And we're like, listen, here, because, it's learned helplessness is sort of a systematic outcome of the medical culture. So I have a lot to say and I could go in many different directions about that, but that was kind of a long introduction to this is who I was before in my career. Yes. That's the foundation upon which I have built this phase of my career. And so now, we're a multi-million-dollar coaching program in Inc. 5000 Entrepreneur Magazine, et cetera. So we're well established. We've been doing this for 7 years now. Oh, and it's not just me. It's a team of like 30 of us, that work with the women physicians 7 days a week and are always available. And it's really remarkable and magical and an honor.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, celebrating that. I mean, wow, that is amazing. And clearly reaching so many women at different phases in their lives, and that whole part of empowering them through your coaching, which is documented to be the most effective physician wellness intervention to date. Wow. Many congratulations. Very inspiring.
Thank you. And I think honestly, a big part of it, well, as a coach, you separate fact from fiction. That's one. Mm-hmm. That's one of the most important. What is the fact here? Mm-hmm. And then what are all the things we're telling ourselves about it? However, coaching one-on-one is incredibly powerful. There's lots of randomized controlled trials. It is very effective. I do think one thing that is also combined can be very magical is the community, because people just get you. Because when you go and you try to talk to someone outside of healthcare, outside of medicine, they're like, well, why don't you just blah like that? Like, it's that simple. Why don't you just blah, blah, blah? And you're like, you just really don't get it, do you? You just don't. They don't understand. So it could be really helpful whether, say you're in AA or say you're in any other, whatever kind of support group you can think of, like Moms with Small Children's support group, or like elders who are, people trying to care for elderly people, or whatever the thing is. It's like having a community of people who get it matters. And that's why probably people listen to your podcast, is because they feel seen and heard and validated. So when you talk about effectiveness, I think that part of that is like, if I was talking to med students, second years could guide the first years because they get it.
Yes.
And so there's people like you who get it. And everyone's going through their own version of it. And everyone's in a different phase, as you said, of their career. So it's like, oh, I went through that before. Yeah. Here's what I did. Yes. And, I saw my partner do that before. Here's what she did. And so it could be helpful.
And it doesn't have to be so far ahead. Like you're saying, it might just be 12 months ahead. And there's that wisdom and experience that could be shared from that temporal lens, rather than now you're an attending, you've got all the information. Oh, not necessarily.
Good luck to you. You're all done. You're baked and cooked. You wanted to be here. You thought your life would be rainbows and daisies, right? Everything would be perfect if you could just get done with training. Right. And then you get done with training and you're like, so everything was so simple back when I was in training. I didn't have all these big grown up responsibilities and mortgages, so I don't feel I can leave, and all this stuff. So it's that arrival fallacy. You think you'll be happy when, and so everybody listening, the time to be happy is now, friends.
That's it.
Really, there's no reason to wait. Tomorrow's promised to no one.
Yes. So Sunny, give us your story around what was that pivot point between changing from being full-time professorial role, because something significant happened in your life from what I understand about your story. So please share that with my audience who may not be up with that.
It's interesting because I find that a lot of people come to my coaching program when they're having some life inflection point or transition, right? That's often when we slow down enough to reflect and actually take inventory of our lives. And we are usually so busy, whether it's a patient every 15 minutes or driving here to there or writing the notes or whatever the thing is, there's not a lot of downtime. Yeah. As a healthcare professional and for us, as women physicians. So I had a bicycle accident. I had gone to Tahiti, which I hadn't had a vacation in quite a while. And it had been a year and a half to 2 years or something. And so we went on Mother's Day and we're doing the overwater bungalow thing, went up the mountain on a bicycle and which, the chain was coming off. I was struggling. I'm not an athlete. What was I doing? but it was so pretty. How could you not? And then I crashed on the way down on sort of a steep hill and went over the handlebars, landed on my face and broke my face and my hands, elbows, wrists. So basically, I got a big head bonk concussion. So I ended up with both of my hands and arms in casts so that I couldn't use them at all, both of my arms. So I couldn't feed myself, dress myself, go to the bathroom by myself, anything like that. I couldn't eat because my face was all smashed in and I had metal in my face. And then because of the head injury, I couldn't like stand or sit, because if I did, I had positional orthostatic tachycardia syndrome and I would start vomiting. So,
oh, gosh.
Aside from just not being able to use my hands, I couldn't really even do anything but lay down. And then I was, offered, because my friends are all busy women physicians, and then come by and be like, oh my gosh, this is so terrible, in between running to soccer or this or that on the weekend, and like stop by and zoom in and zoom out. And I'm like, because the world just becomes still. It goes from busy to complete stillness. There was absolutely nothing I could do. Like, it was a big deal to get up off the sofa a few times a day with help to get to the bathroom. So like, it's absolute just stillness and reflection, as I said, and kind of out of it. And so like, the contrast between me and my friends being so busy was like, I always thought, where are you going so fast? Like, what are you in such a rush for? If I ever get back to walking and driving, I'm not going to take it for granted, and I'm not just going to rush around like that. Right. I was like, if only I could walk and drive, I would be so happy. If I could just feed myself, I'd be so happy. And so I sat there stunned. Some women physicians friends had recommended that I listen to a podcast called The Life Coach School. I didn't even know there were podcasts. But back then it was 2017. 2017, yeah. So 8 years ago now. And, but people showed me, because I couldn't do it myself, that there was an app on my phone. And in fact, I pre-installed on my phone, which obviously your users know because they're listening to this. Sure. So, so I was like, I don't know, why would I want to listen to something about life coaches and what a life coach school? But, I started at episode 1, and over that course of months where I was home, I wasn't really allowed to do anything else with my brain, because I needed brain rest from concussion. So I wasn't allowed to really watch TV and read, and I couldn't hold a book with my hands. So I just sat there, and my husband would put my little AirPods in, and I would just lay there and listen all day. And hundreds of episodes later, I finished and got caught up to present day. And she said, I had already heard in the podcast where you can't change your circumstances, like broken arms, because I was ruminating and replaying, which I'm sure a lot of people listening can identify with. When you ruminate and replay things and replay things and replay, I'm like, why did I get on the bike? Why? It's like that one moment, if I could do anything differently, can't I just go back? And the truth is, that's a waste of energy. It's your brain trying to keep you safe, right? From ever doing it again. But it's not helpful, because you can't change it. And so it taught me, when you can't change your circumstances, you can change the way you look at those circumstances, not in a way that gaslights you, because obviously it sucks that happened. You can validate that's a very real experience, feeling frustrated because you wish you didn't get on the bike. And you can also feel curious about how this could be an opportunity to change and reflect on your life and slow down in a way I never, ever, ever would have let myself do. Like, who takes months off? No one, generally speaking, a very small number of people. And so by the time I got to present day, then I heard her say, and we're offering, a call about if you want to train in this kind of coaching. And I had heard there was one physician, as I had told you, who was doing it. So I was like, I think everyone thinks I'm crazy because I'm listening to this podcast. I'm telling my friends, I'm telling my family. Nobody wants to listen. No, I'm like, no, but it's really good. Like, your thoughts create your feelings. No matter what circumstance you're in, you have to understand, like, it's really powerful. And they're like, la, la, la. So I was like, I'm going to get on that webinar. I'll see what it's like, because there's one physician who does it. She was a pediatrician, Katrina Bell, and she doesn't sound crazy. So I got on there and learned that, that's like called a webinar. And that was, she pitched if we wanted to get in, and you just had to make a deposit. So I did. And then I had to tell people, well, first I told my spouse, which he was like, what on earth have you done? And then, I didn't tell, I was like, oh, I'm going to a conference. I'm going to a meeting, because it was a meeting and a conference where I was going to train to become a coach in person. But I didn't tell people that was the reason I was going. So I was keeping it on the down low, I didn't want people to know. And when I got there, I did see 4 other physicians in person. So there were 5 of us, and I looked for us. The first day I was like, you're a doctor? There was 200 people there. I was like, you're a doctor. What's your name? What's your phone number? I am too. Does anyone know you're here? What are you doing? And what's so funny is all 5 of us, no one knew we were there.
Is that right?
Like, it was all on the download. Yeah, because we all were drawn and compelled. And like, this is so fascinating about medical culture, right? Is conform, conform. Don't think outside the box. Do things straight. And again, this was a significant time and financial investment.
Yes.
And we were like ashamed of our desire to feel better and to think of ways to feel better and to do things a little bit differently. None of us had left our full-time jobs. I was still a full-time professor. And so went there, was inspired. It was amazing. I trained. I didn't know if it was just going to be me that this worked for. And so I followed their program about work with people for free. So I worked with strangers for free. And I was like, is this really going to work? Does this really help people the way I think it's going to? And my first calls, I remember, like, I practiced with some friends, but then the first one was somebody who had $400,000 in student loan debt and was deciding, she was in her last year of residency, if she was going to allow herself to take some time to decompress or go straight to work. And she really, really wanted time. That's what she needed. Understandably, who here doesn't recognize that and identify with that? But she felt, so oppressed by all this debt, and which job was she going to choose and how fast was she going to go? And I was like, $400,000 in debt. Okay, let's see if this thought model coaching really can deal with anything. And in the end of 1 hour, she was just like, that was the most helpful thing ever, because she chose herself, right? The circumstances are what they are, but they're going to keep being what they are. And she chose herself in this unique space of life. And then my next person was someone who, had a gene such that she was choosing double mastectomy prophylactically, and, was going through like, was this the right choice? Was it not? Was she making mistakes? And again, it applied there. And she again thought at the end of that, I don't usually talk about all these scenarios. I don't know how I'm coming up with them today, but it's just that I had to go through that process of like really believing, holding space. And there's an inherent trust, because I'm like, why are these strangers telling me this? And the truth is, in part, it's because we're physicians. And so there's an inherent trust. We get each other and we know the other person is legitimate and, trustworthy and expert and gets us. And if they say they have a tool that might help, I mean, it's like any new antibiotic or drug or whatever. It's like, here, let me offer you this. I'll assess what you have. I'll offer you some input and see if this can be helpful to you. So then over the handful of doing that, 10 times or so, then I started my business. And ever since then, it's really, truly remarkable how people come in and they'll say, really, I've had people say on their first call, do you really think coaching helps cancer? Do you really think it can help me? And I was like, absolutely. Because there are so many feelings, so many thoughts, so much emotion, so much humanity that comes up when we go through these crises. And also, it's not just for struggle. As you know, I brought up some struggles. Yeah. We use it to create our lives on purpose. So that's how I was using it too. I got through my struggle and then I created my life on purpose. I was like, okay, they tell me I can create any result I want. So let's go. It's on. That's what they say. I'm going to test it. And I believed them and I did and went and created a lot of things. So that's sort of the story about how I transitioned, was the bike accident to learning how it really helped for me, to learning that it really helps others. Then I did one-on-one coaching. And then within a year, I got busy enough that I had, because I was still a full-time doctor. So I had, once I had 10 private clients, I decided I was going to group the clients together so that I could see more people in that period of time. And we've been doing group coaching ever since 2019 then.
Yes. Wow. Amazing. Thank you for sharing all of that, Sunny, and how impactful, I guess, a podcast was on your life now and your changing career.
And then and that's so funny because it's just like yours. This is a podcast. You have no idea who this is touching, and so I was like, "That's what you see one, do one, teach one." So I saw my coach did a podcast, so I was like, "Okay, apparently a podcast is what you do." So I just got out my computer and was like me trying to figure out. I just Googled how to make a podcast, and I didn't know anybody, not a single person who had a podcast that was in my real life, especially again years ago. But So that I just obsessively recorded like zillions of time. Anybody who wants to go listen to my podcast, the very first episode, it's a moving episode, but it took me like, I don't know, 30 recordings to get through it without sobbing. Because I talked through about the Hippocratic Oath and like people who had read it and things that had happened to our students. Because, you know, I said, you know, it's the utmost care of human life and its quality. And yet, you know, we were creating a lot of struggle in students and depression and mental health and even suicidality and suicide. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, trying to reflect through those things through the lens of the bright-eyed, bushy-tailed student we all were that came to medicine idealistic, and then they sort of systematically destroy our mental health. And some have significant losses and some morbidity, mortality, etc. If like med school is an exposure and residency and training is an exposure, it's an occupational hazard. It really is. It's a known occupational hazard. And so yeah, when you say a podcast can really impact people, it really, really impacted my life. And then I started doing it. And despite my perfectionism and intermittentness of creating this podcast, it's probably the most irregular podcast that there is. However, it's always there. So it's like, podcast, but it's always there. And so every single day since I started publishing in 2018, more women physicians across the globe find it and listen. And so I run into people, as I'm sure you do too. You're just like, I remember the very first time I was just at a medical meeting, and you think, again, nobody knows what you're doing because who's really listening?
Sure.
You think no one, you're talking to a mic in your bedroom.
Yes.
And someone walked up to me at a medical conference and said, "Are you Sunny Smith?" And I was like, "Yeah." I figured they probably knew me from school or some speech that I'd given or whatever in the academic world. And they're like, "I recognize your voice." And I was like, "From?" Because it never occurred to me it was from the podcast.
Look at that.
And she was like, "I'm a podcast listener." And then she like pulled out her phone and took a picture. I was like, "Oh my God, this is so huge. This is an amazing life moment. Thank you." And I'm like hugging her. Like, this is amazing. And so podcasts, then there's so many people who have said over the years, they'll come up to me and they quote episodes. Like there's one that's called, She Believed She Could, So She Did. There's one that's called Indoctrination. There's one that's called What We Really Do. But like a lot of people like the one that's called What We Really Do because it's actually from the Facebook group where I said, "Tell me what you really do." Like say you're an orthopedic surgeon. The answer isn't I said bones, and it's not revenue generating units. It's, you know, I let people walk down the aisle to get married, or whatever their thing is, you know, like, it's like your function in society, your function in people's lives. And it's not rushing room to room. It's, you know, I save children from blah, 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 you know, whatever that is, from the worst day of their life. So it's just really meaningful. Again, I'm emotional often. I wear my heart on my sleeve, but then when you talk about the meaning of medicine in our lives and what we do, it's hard not to be touched with how important what we do is in society and how much we lose sight of that because of what it does to us as human beings.
Yeah.
So yes, power of podcast. Yes. Amen.
Yeah. Love it. And Katrina Ubell was also the first like doctor coach who I found as well from all the way across in Australia. And I did her program and loved that. And
beautiful.
And then chose to do life coach school after that. And seeing over 200 doctors who'd chosen to do the coach training in the US, who I guess at that point were then talking about it more, Sunny. I was like, hey, this is possible as well. I could do this too. And, you know, I'm actually a rehabilitation physician for people with brain injuries, and I've learned about the human brain in such a different way to how I ever learned about it in med school or beyond. So it's been...
Yes, amen.
Yeah.
I agree. We just don't learn about the thought processes, the psychology. We take psychiatry, but we don't, it's sort of like, I have a podcast episode that talks about, you know, learned helplessness, and then the person who was studied that, which is what we have in medicine, learned helplessness. But it switches over from sort of like the psychology, pathology part over to, it's Martin Seligman, to positive psychology. And what is the science? You know, he sort of started that movement of what is the science of how to look at the way human psychology works for good and intentionally set it out to utilize, you know, the functions and biases of the brain for good. Like we have a negativity bias towards things like, you know, the bike accident. So we think of the negative things. And again, that's a function of your brain so that you stay alive. However, you can hijack the confirmation bias. Like there is also a confirmation bias. So let's set it to look for things that are good, right? And let's understand why we feel what we feel. Yeah. So I found it so helpful and revealing, even just as an awareness tool. Yeah. Even if we're not using it to change where we are, just the awareness changes us. It's like if you weigh yourself every day, you're going to be more mindful of what you eat and if you're walking and things like that. So even if you're just aware of your thoughts and your feelings, you notice, oh, I feel this way in this scenario. Yeah. I feel this way in this scenario. So you're like, oh, let's do more of that other scenario. Like, let's go outside and walk, you know? Yeah. It's just, you can't help but change.
Yeah, let's maybe take it into the medical scenario, because you and I have both lived that, and we definitely work with people who are still very much in that. I'm still clinical as well and love my clinical work. But emotions are not necessarily warranted, needed, welcomed. Like, emotions in the workplace, what role do they play? Hey, Sonny?
I mean, that's like saying you're not going to have a heartbeat in the workplace, or you're not going to need to pee in the workplace or sleep in the workplace, which I know they think. They think that we can go in there and not eat or drink or pee and don't need to sleep at night. But we are not robots. We are not an electronic health record on a computer being pushed around with like a head with no body. Yes. Right. It's not just a cart with a computer on the top. We are not just AI, although I did read that Annals Internal Medicine yesterday. I saw an article that says that AI at urgent care at Cedars-Sinai was able to do like 2/3 of the diagnoses correctly, which is interesting, and had followed some of the protocols even a little better. But again, that was just urgent care, and it was just I don't want to put down any urgent care doctors, you know what I mean? But it's like it was an ICU challenging differential diagnosis. It was like, you know, a percentage of the UTIs and things like that. But in terms of AI, but there's nothing like, and because I was a medical educator, you know, and talk about Hippocrates and like all of these things, there is nothing like a human who cares for another human. There is nothing like it. This is the most noble profession, right? The care of the patient is in caring for the patient, right? So I would say that just to stay in touch with that you are a human being first. Yes, we care about your skills. Yes, we care about your knowledge, but your patient wants to feel, just like I said with women physicians, seen, heard, understood, cared for. They want us to sit down. They want us to look them in the eye. It's okay to cry with your clients. It's okay to get tearful. It's okay to get choked up. It's okay. I mean, I'm not saying you have to, because we do have some kind of distance, right? But you show up. There's a video too by the people at Stanford that's called I Am Human. It's a video. It's a project as well. Yeah. And it shows why it's powerful is it shows all of these healthcare workers of different kinds walking around the hospital room to room. And, you know, one person goes in to operate as a surgeon, and what they're thinking, it's all what they're thinking, you know, and so someone's like, oh, I hope my patient has a good outcome. But that's like, you know, 10% of the people. The other people are like, you know, my marriage is going terribly, or I can't believe my kid is so sick, or I just can't take this anymore. And there's like a room of people where everyone inside is having their own internal dialogue that no one else in the room knows anything about. Yeah. And like, I can't do this anymore. I wonder if I have cancer. Is my biopsy going to turn out okay? And they're all just sitting there like doing their work. And you forget that this is the real human experience of being a physician. So I think if we want to train the most excellent clinicians, if we want to maintain the most excellent clinicians, if we want to stay in our career and have sustainability at all,
yes,
we have to get to bring our whole selves everywhere we go. And people have better outcomes and have better lives if we allow ourselves to be more human and make friends or colleagues at work and talk about things. And I mean, we all know the nurses at the nurses station talk, but the doctors, in my opinion, in my experience, usually are busy and isolated in a different way. I'm sure nurses are as well, but you know, the way that we go from our office into a room, we close the door, we come back out, we go to our room, it's like, there isn't the same like huddle around a nursing station and even sometimes that can be difficult, but they're just these days with the pressure, there isn't that same, unless you're a surgeon waiting for a case, you know, or an anesthesiologist waiting for a case, there isn't that same, you know, gathering space with some downtime where people reflect.
Yes.
It's just go, go, go.
Yeah. So bringing the whole self to work, absolutely love that. And you're really talking about how clinicians with more emotional awareness or points of reflection, either during work or choosing to do that outside of work, is great. Let's also consider around how beneficial it is to sort of have that sort of self-care approach as well, or compassion towards yourself in a hierarchy or in an institution that also I feel part of the hidden curriculum was not necessarily demonstrating a heap of compassion towards myself. That was like a lovely little inner critic that still hangs out sometimes, but that had a lot of practice and refinement, and I guess in a way helped me get through all the years that I had to get through. But I'd love to hear some of your takes on the benefits of you've blogged about this as well, and I've done podcasts on this, how we, the individual in healthcare, are such, if not the most valuable asset in showing up to provide the care, hopefully not having done a 24-hour shift and then starting an operation. I think that was one of your lines you put in there. So yeah, let's be, we've got probably one more question after this, but let's just highlight that value of being aware of our own well-being and looking after ourselves as well as clinicians in this wide world of healthcare.
Yeah, so much to say about all these things. There's, when you mention hopefully not being on for 24 hours, I mean, that is just the way it is, right? And I actually, if people have Amazon streaming wherever they are listening to, they can go and find a movie where I'm talking about that. It's called Do No Harm. And depending on what you think about, you know, different portions of it, you know, there is a line where it's about physician distress and well-being and suicidality. And where I say, you know, if we all wore a tag like on our badge that showed how many hours we were on and how many hours we'd been awake, no one would choose to see us and let us operate on their children or themselves, on their brain, on their heart, because the number of doctors that are working that are in their first 8 hours is very small, right? Depending on your specialty and field and what's going on. It's just, you wouldn't let a truck driver do it. You wouldn't let a pilot do it. Yeah. They pull planes off the runway if the pilots or staff or crew get too far along. And us, like, we're just getting started 8 hours in. If we come in at 6, 8 hours in is 2 p.m.
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding? We're not going home. Not even close. We're on until the next day, and then we're on for a whole week, or then we're all like, it's really knowing what we know about science now, knowing what we know about the human brain and function and cortisol and mortality, and that this stuff actually kills people, and that different specialties like emergency medicine die decades earlier than they need to, right? This, like, it's killing us and it's terrible for our patients. And it's as if we're this sounds bad, but like the equivalent of staying up all night is like drunk driving, right? Like we're not okay.
Yeah.
Our coordination is not as good, no matter how like strong mentally you are. Oh, I'm tough. I'm resilient. And that's when you're in your 20s that you're starting to do this. And then as you get to your 30s, 40s, 50s, like at my age, at your age, like even 40s and 50s, we don't have the attentional capacity. We don't have the mental capacity. We don't have the bodies. It's biology.
Yeah.
It's not a desire. Right. And so when we talk about the hidden curriculum, I mean, it is hidden, and yet it's hidden in plain sight because we all know it. Like we all know, I don't know about, you know, if things are culturally different, if the names and terms are different, you know, sort of where you are, but like a golden weekend, that means a weekend. And where I am, everybody knows in America, you know, or Canada, a golden weekend means you got Saturday and Sunday off. And you get one of them a month. And we all just comply. Like that's normal and okay to have one weekend off a month. And it's so rare that it's called golden. And strong work means you overexerted yourself and went way beyond, right? Like I think strong work is going home on time and saying no to extra care. But they think strong work is taking 10 trauma cases after you've been up all night, right? So and being a team player means, you know, taking on way too much stuff. Yeah. You're a team player. No, you're causing harm by being complicit in the culture of medicine, which expects us to do way too much and leave our kids. Like I always thought that they were going to have to call CPS or something because you're always, as the physician mom, the last one to pick up your kids. Yeah. Everybody else gets out of work and just leaves. And we're like, oh no, we have all this stuff we have to continue doing. So, I just think we are taught, we are indoctrinated for excellence, for perfectionism, to not let anybody else down, to never get it wrong, to sacrifice yourself indefinitely, you know, delay gratification. You'll be happy some other time, not now. Sure. If everybody else comes first, not you. You can do it. Suck it up. Everybody else is fine. Why aren't you? So I think just that enculturation, the medical culture is dangerous the way that it is right now. And it was created, just the awareness that it was created over 100 years ago by people who were on cocaine, right? The surgeons at that time were on cocaine. And they started residencies and they lived in the hospital, and that's why they called it residency. And there were women at home taking care of the kids. So it's just, and there was no EHRs and antibiotics and pressure to go fast and all this stuff. So it's just a whole different world right now, like completely different world. And yet all that lives on. And so I do believe though, that things are sort of at this crisis point. They've never been worse than now. The pandemic sort of started this increased, awareness started before that. Pandemic made it even worse. Beyond the pandemic, we've seen that you can shift things in healthcare immediately if you need to, like telehealth.
Yes.
That just did not exist widespread until boom, you made it such that no one could make a single dollar in healthcare unless they got this up and running. It's up and running. Yeah. So now physicians are now see that there is some flexibility. And for those who think there isn't, it's like, how can you find that maybe, just maybe, there might be some way for you to find some flexibility if you had to. Like if I gave you $1 million for you to find some way to earn an income and show up at work that wasn't so awful and painful and deadly to you, could you find it? Many people aren't ready yet, but think of friends or look on the internet to see if you find anyone, or like read a book. I don't know, anywhere you can think of things, people doing it differently. And so I think now a real value, like in California, our Surgeon General says that workplace flexibility is essential now. Ever since the pandemic started, people have that as an idea it could exist. Yeah. So the flexibility is now what we're looking for. And it's, I think those of us who won't and say it has to be done a certain way, again, that's complicit in sustaining harm to physicians. So we have to change. It's time to change. When things get painful enough, we have to change, and we get to, and we need to remember that we are the most valuable resource in healthcare. And without us, there is no healthcare. So no matter your specialty, you are highly desirable and can find a position. There's a community that is like, would love to have you there taking care of their people. So how do we have a good fit?
Yeah. Thanks, Sunny. Yeah. Let's round out with a little bit about you. I always ask my guests, what is one self-care practice that you rarely miss? What resonates for you?
Oh, these days, the best one that I do for sure, the most meaningful, is every morning when I open my eyes, when I first, even if I haven't opened my eyes yet, when I'm aware, I have an awareness that I'm awake and I'm in my body and I'm still on this planet and I can hear, I live right next to the ocean. Sorry.
Hey.
And so I can hear the waves. And I just think to myself, I woke up today. I'm alive. I made it. I'm here. It's another day. God, I'm so grateful. And I know that sounds insane, but as you know, I had a life-threatening incident, a surprise out of the blue 6 months ago, did not expect, and really had a period of time that was brief, but terrifying, where I really thought I might not make it. And so I wrote a letter to myself about once I got well enough to think I might make it, but was still scared. I wrote, may I get to live? And then I wrote what I wanted to do. If I got, it was very, just simple. Like, I want to have more days on this planet was the first line. I just want to have more days on this planet. Then I want to have more healthy days, more watching the sunset into the ocean, more blankies with my doggie, more watching my little boy smile and laugh. And so like those are the self-care. And then it goes on, from there to broader family, friends, community, etc. But it really reminds you what really matters is that you woke up today. That is what matters, because everything else, like, again, whether I could walk or not at that point, because I had this illness, I again couldn't walk. I could not walk by myself. I mean, I could barely get out of the bed because I had sepsis. My lactic acid was 5.6. It was terrifying. Yet, it just, if you have breath, and again, this sounds like, oh yeah, of course, whatever, but like, no, seriously, because if you have ever had the possibility that could be taken from you, that is all that matters. And I'll tell you, I had impending doom and thought I wasn't going to make it. And I never once thought of money. I never once thought about work. I never once, like, all those things about my house, about my this, like, people are like, yeah, but I have all this and I have that and I have the bills and I have this. You don't actually care about any of that if it really comes down to it. You care that you get to be alive, and you only get so many minutes and days, and you don't know how many. So my self-care practice right now is very intentionally, I woke up today. And it's really very magical.
Sunny, thank you so much for sharing that with us. A beautiful way to round out the podcast today. It's been an absolute honor having you on, and thank you so much for, so many stories, such a beautiful journey to through your life. And we're really looking forward to connecting with you again in a few months' time on the Curious About Coaching Virtual Summit. I'll link quite a lot of the things as I can in the show notes, but just please remind my audience, where can they best find you online? Where can they connect with you?
Yes, if they're a female physician, they can go to Facebook. You can find me there every single day inside of our Empowering Women Physicians Facebook group. That's where most people know me from. However, if they're not actually a woman physician, because there's a lot of people who will be listening who might be a man or a nurse practitioner or whatever, they can find me at empoweringwomenphysicians.com. I have a guide there that talks through what we do. And then the podcast, of course, same name, is free, available, ready, 365 days a year.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to this episode. Schedule a 60-minute power hour with me and leave with relief, decisions made, and clear next steps. Or send me an email for a speaking inquiry. All information is available at drjobraid.com with links in the show notes.